Welcome to Sodanonymous. I'm your host, Sodanonymous. Today's episode, I'm going to be going over Pepsi. I've got some fun facts here. Let's go over that real quick. Pepsi originally came about in 1893 as Brad's drink, named after the creator, Caleb Bradham. It was renamed to Pepsi-Cola in 1898. Pepsi was originally marketed as a health drink said to help with indigestion, hence the name Pepsi, derived from the word dyspepsia or indigestion. After losing big during the sugar crisis of World War I, Pepsi, which had been moderately successful up until that point, was sold around a bit, even being offered to the Coca-Cola company 3 separate times. They turned it down each time. Eventually, Pepsi ended up in the hands of Charles Guth, the president of Loft Inc., which was at the time the largest candy company in the world. He wanted to have a cheaper cola than Coca-Cola to sell to stores, and Pepsi was going to be it. After reformulating the soda to more closely resemble what we have today, he debuted the drink in all of his stores. At the time, Pepsi did remarkably well as a budget alternative to Coca-Cola, selling almost twice as much soda for the same price, only a nickel. This pricing decision allowed Pepsi to thrive during the Great Depression. In the 40s, Pepsi also tackled a new niche market for cola, the African American market. The new president, Walter Mack, had personal convictions towards the more progressive side of things and knew that they would be the only ones marketing to African Americans in the soda field. After hiring an all-black team to brainstorm the African American marketing strategy and putting their plan into motion, the push was so successful that by 1950, African Americans were 3 times more likely to buy Pepsi over Coke. In the 60s, Pepsi's marketing focus switched from an emphasis on a bargain to a lifestyle. It was marketed heavily to the young and rebellious youth. This strategy has served them extremely well and still seems to be the primary focus today. The Cola Wars really heated up in the mid-70s when Pepsi unveiled their strongest marketing idea ever, the Pepsi Challenge. What Pepsi found was that when both Pepsi and Coke were put side to side, unlabeled, most people would choose Pepsi over Coke. This genius marketing idea turned Pepsi from a competitor to an actual threat for Coke. Pepsi's crowning achievement in the Cola Wars came about in 1985 when the Coca-Cola company decided it needed to reformulate Coke for a new generation. Pepsi fueled the outrage by claiming victory over Coke, declaring a holiday for all of their employees and incorporating it into their advertising. Of course, we all know how that turned out, and if you don't, check out my Coke review. Link's going to be in the description. While Pepsi has never outright surpassed Coca-Cola, it remains incredibly relevant to this day as the 3rd most popular soda in the world. All right, well, with these out of the way, let's get on with the review. Now, before we begin, I'd like to comment on a few things. First of all, sort of my personal history with Pepsi. I remember the first time I ever had a Pepsi. I must have been 7, 8, somewhere in there. I was young enough where I was actually riding my dad's shoulders when we went to the carnival. And I wanted a Coke, so I asked him for a Coke, and he went to the the little drink stand, and he came back with a cup full of Pepsi. And I didn't know it at the time. I remember drinking it and saying, "Wow, this Coke tastes different, tastes strange, tastes weird." And he goes, "Oh, that's Pepsi." And it always stuck with me. Every time I drink Pepsi, I sort of think back to that. Which just like, yeah, it tastes a little different. I'm more of a Coke fanboy. In terms of Coke versus Pepsi, my preference has always been Coke. The sort of "is Pepsi okay" line that the waiter will give you sort of originated from people like me. Because if someone says, "Is Pepsi okay?" I'll actually change my drink to something else. I don't hate the soda, but I don't consider myself a particular fan of Pepsi. If I want to drink cola, I'm going to drink Coca-Cola. But yeah, Pepsi has always been sort of this romantic idea in my head. I want there to be a cola that is different than Coca-Cola that I can reach for and enjoy. But every time I try Pepsi, and it's usually about once a year, I find myself disappointed. You know, this is a really popular drink. It's the 3rd most popular soda in the entire world, and there are so many people who will swear their life on Pepsi being a better soda than Coke. And I just don't see it. But it's been a couple of months since I've had this. I'm going to be very analytical about it, very thorough, and who knows, this might be the time I really understand Pepsi. So I'm excited to give it a try for that reason. Before I crack it open here, I would like to talk a little bit about the packaging. I'm not a huge fan of this minimalist design. I think it's definitely better than the cluttered look of the new universal can design that Coca-Cola is doing on all of their drinks besides standard Coca-Cola. But it's a little too minimalist for me. I don't really like the lowercase letters. I prefer more of the wacky designs that you would see in the 2000s or the 90s. This is a little boring to me. I'm not a huge fan of this new logo either. I think the old Swish logo looked a lot cooler. This one, I don't know, just something about it rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't literally look that cool. They actually put a lot of thought into this. Doing some research on it, I found a big document explaining the philosophy for changing the actual logo. And a lot of it seems kind of like marketing BS, but it is interesting. So I will link that down in the description for you to check out in case you're curious. But yeah, I like the colors. It's cool. It's got the red, white, and blue. It's an appetizing color palette. It's just not organized in the most interesting way. I think it's a little too minimalist, and minimalist screams bargain brand to me. But anyway, besides that, I think Pepsi's marketing is really effective. Even as somebody who doesn't consider themselves a fan of Pepsi, I really like sort of the Pepsi brand identity, especially the more 80s and 90s brand Pepsi, where they were really all in on youth culture, and I think that has been their greatest strength. Whereas Coke is like old-time tradition, Santa Claus and America and that kind of stuff. This is more, youth, and that's interesting to me how marketing, even if it's not really connected to the soda, can sort of affect people like that. Well, anyway, I'm going to crack this guy open, and we're going to get a smell test here. So let's go. Gotta love that sound. All right. Nice and bubbly. There you go. It's a dark cola color. It's fairly bubbly, which is nice. Yeah, it just sort of looks like a dark syrup, like your standard cola, like Coke. Nothing too surprising there. It's sort of brown color. From the top of my head, this might be slightly redder looking than Coca-Cola, but I would need to do a back-to-back comparison to know for sure. But all right, let's give it a smell here. Yeah, it's night and day. I want to take just a moment to say that if you think Coke and Pepsi taste the exact same, no matter if you agree with me that Coke is way better or disagree with me and you think Pepsi's way better, it's like I respect people who like Pepsi better and understand that their soda tastes different. To the people who think that Coke and Pepsi taste the same, you're wackos. You're crazy to me, because this is night and day. All right, well, how to describe this? You're hit with a very strong, sweet smell. So the sweetness is definitely more pronounced. I wouldn't say, how to describe that? I wouldn't say it's necessarily super bright like Coca-Cola with real sugar, but it's definitely brighter than Coca-Cola with the high fructose corn syrup. It's got a strong cola gummy type smell. That's what I'm associating it with. It smells a lot more artificial than a Coca-Cola to me. The acidic smell is more like a lime than like the lemon that I would get from Coca-Cola. And it's not nearly as dark and deep. So it's a little bit less like syrup, and it's more... It's more like a brown sugar smell. It smells good. I like the smell, but it's a lot less complex. It's a slightly brighter, less deep, dark smell. It smells a little bit chemically, a little bit more artificial, but I think it smells like it's appetizing. So I'm interested in trying this. Now, interesting thing to note about regular Pepsi. Regular Pepsi is made with high fructose corn syrup and also sugar. So based on the order of the ingredients, because the ingredients order goes from most amount in the drink to least amount in the drink, there's definitely more of a high fructose corn syrup mixture in here than there is sugar. But normal Pepsi has a little splash of sugar in there. So they might do that just to give it a little bit more of a pop that Pepsi's known for. But that's really interesting to me because regular Coke is made with just high fructose corn syrup, and this has high fructose corn syrup and sugar. They also have a sugar-only variant that I'm going to be trying for you later. But yeah, this is just the standard regular variant. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and give this a shot here. So yeah, I haven't had this in a couple of months. Clearly, I've had Pepsi before. But I'm really interested to sort of take it in and try to explain my experience to you guys. So, Pepsi, going down. Okay. Yeah, it's Pepsi. Pepsi is a very simple flavor. Whereas with Coke, even though I've had Coke hundreds of times in my life, whenever I drink Coke and I really dwell on it, really enjoy the flavor and think about it, I can just pick out these subtle notes and how they all mix together, and there's just so much going on. It's a very complex flavor. And Pepsi is dead simple. The most predominant flavor by far is the sweetness. It tastes very sugary. Underneath the sweetness is a light, not extremely perceptible cola flavor, which is that sort of dark, syrupy flavor. But it's not extremely pronounced. The whole drink isn't dark. It's just a hint of this darker flavor in the center of this blast of sweetness. Not much of a bite. Coca-Cola definitely gives you a strong tongue bite. This is a much gentler soda. So if you're concerned about like the mouth bite that you get from Coke, the really acidic punch, this isn't going to give that for you. Yeah, to me, it tastes almost like a watered down Coke with a lot of extra sugar added. I'm trying to see the point of view of the person who prefers Pepsi. I'm really trying to understand here, like try to find the missing link, but I don't think I'm going to find it this time. Other than being substantially sweeter, I would say I notice a hint of almost I want to say just like a tinge of vanilla. I'm talking minuscule. But I think that sort of supplements the cola flavor to make it smoother. This is absolutely a smoother beverage than Coca-Cola. So if you're looking for a smooth cola, you might lean more towards the Pepsi camp. This is definitely brighter and sweeter than Coca-Cola. So if you are looking for a really sugary, sweet candy beverage, Pepsi might be your guy. It's reasonably well carbonated. In my perception was that Pepsi wasn't that well carbonated. But this is actually okay. It's nowhere near as much as Coke, but there's enough bubbles in here to be to not complain about it. But I usually like that punch from Coke. That's really what draws me to it, and this is completely lacking that. And it leaves kind of this aftertaste in your mouth that is, I won't say it's like sickly sweet, but it leaves a little like syrupy residue in my mouth that Coke generally doesn't leave much of, that I think is worthy of note. Now, I'm being fairly negative here. It's not to say that the soda is bad necessarily. I think it's fine. I don't think this is a reasonable replacement for Coca-Cola. If I wanted a replacement for Coca-Cola, I would take Coke Zero over this. I would take Coke Life especially over this. But if I'm looking for something a little bit brighter, I have a few more options as well. But I don't think that this is necessarily the worst option you could have. Yeah, it's just super simple. It's almost like it's not dark enough to be syrup, so it's almost more of like a honey, where it's just got a little bit of that darker caramel taste, and it's just mostly sugar. So it's a really bright sort of soda. And if that's what you enjoy, that's what you enjoy, and you probably like Pepsi better. But for me, it's just I can't add it to my repertoire of colas. It's just, it gives me that sweetness that's good, but it doesn't give me enough of a flavor that I find interesting or enjoyable enough to sort of justify its existence in my sort of soda pantheon that I switch out. So yeah, this is my once every half year attempt to understand and enjoy a Pepsi. And once again, I don't really get it. But it's okay. You know, it's not horrible. I could drink it, but I don't really like it. I don't really love it. I'm going to give it a rating here. Let's give it a rating. Okay. I'm going to give it a 6. I am more on the positive than the negative side. I don't think it tastes gross. It's not very interesting to me. It could be a 7 if it wasn't for the residual mouthfeel that I think really detracts from this. And I think it's Pepsi's biggest negative aspect is that sort of like weird syrupy flavor in your mouth. But it's not too much of a problem to really knock it down to the negative side of the spectrum. I would drink this. I don't think it's terrible. It's just sort of a simple, unimpressive flavor. So yeah, this is going to be a 6 out of 10. And that's my thoughts on regular Pepsi. Have you guys tested Pepsi versus Coke? Do you have a preference on either? Let me know down in the comments below, especially you Pepsi guys. If you can articulate what Pepsi tastes like to you, I've seen in a lot of discussions that people who prefer Pepsi will go on and on about why they don't like Coke. It's too acidic, it's too bitey, it tastes like acid, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, I can understand how you could perceive the Coke flavor that way, but tell me why Pepsi is a good soda rather than necessarily saying why Coke is bad. Because I really want to understand. I've been trying to understand for a while why this is so popular, and it's just seems to be beyond me. It's a very simple but not exceptional drink, in my opinion. So let me know down in the comments below, especially if you're a Pepsi guy. And yeah, that's about it. So subscribe, like, comment, do whatever you got to do, share it around, do what you want. And yeah, I hope I see you next time. So this is Sodanonymous signing off.